And continuing on with this Pinto, now that we have our motor mounts in place, we're trying to get the exhaust tidied up as best we can. We've got these dumps that come down from the headers and sweep under the car, and we're trying to get them tucked up as high as we can. We've got a plate in here that bolts across the engine cross member and ties that to the side rails to stiffen that up a little bit. So we had to put the plate in and then put the exhaust back on, and then, as I said, we've been trying to get that exhaust up as high as we can. Now over here we're about a ½ inch below the plate. The other side, we're just a bit higher. I'm afraid that's probably as high as we can go. The problem is now at the back there, you probably can't see way back there, but we notched the reinforcement plate around the pipe, and basically the notch needs to be made a little deeper so we can raise up the tail end of that pipe back there as it runs back under the car. So we've got to take both of these pipes back off, take the plate off, grind those openings in the plate a little deeper, and then put the whole thing back together again. And finally we may be able to tack weld the collector to the pipe. We've shortened things up to the point where what we're going to have to do, we've drilled a hole there in the pipe, and we're going to have to sort of rosette weld the collector into that 4 places around. It'll be fine. But that's the job now, is just getting this exhaust up under this car as tidy as we can get it, because we don't want to be dragging the exhaust on the ground when we go over things. So, well, we've done this to hopefully break up our exhaust into sections. We've got this oval pipe, so we got some 1/4 inch material, some oval flanges that it came pretty close to fitting there. Actually, you know, we got these from a different tubing supplier and fitted them to the other tubing that we got. There was a reason behind that, but it's not important. At any rate, that's going to be the sort of front section of pipe. And basically, then we have our tailpiece here. And essentially what we did is we took the 2 flanges and slid them over the pipe and bolted them together with a washer in there to create a gap, and then tacked them into place and took the bolts and washers out, and then ran the bandsaw through the pipes. So what we've got to do now is go around and weld this all up. We're going to have to try to fill this gap a little bit. I think we can take our little ball peen hammer and probably work that pipe out around the flange so it seals up. We'll figure that out, and then we'll get some header gasket material and make a gasket, and that way this other pipe is going to get welded to the pipe that runs all the way to the back under the car, just in front of the rear wheel, and then comes out at a 45. So what we'd be able to do if we wanted open exhaust, more or less, is to take these 4 bolts out and drop that whole section off the car. That's a pretty long collector pipe, but you know, at least it's not all one piece. Now, you can get, depending on where you buy your oval tubing, you can get oval tubing with slip joints. So, you know, this essentially, probably this pipe would be a little bit bigger, swedged out, and this pipe would fit inside of it. But they don't really make oval clamps. So, you know, that company that does that to the pipe sells these plates, and one is a little bigger than the other. The bigger one goes over the swedged one, and then the smaller one goes over this pipe, and you end up with the same thing, except that one pipe is inside the other, and you have a nice seal, and all this does is clamp it together. In this case, our pipes are more or less butted together. Um, the supplier of this pipe didn't have the ability to swedge the pipe out, so all of our joints are butted and welded. In this case, we'll have a gasket and bolts, and that should work. We'll find out. And we may have shown this before in a previous video, not sure, but we got to tack this piece, weld this piece onto the leg. And what we did is we made this band that goes around both pieces to keep them lined up, and we just got her clamped together with a pair of vice grips. It's basically some strap material, and then we opened up some slots in there so we can weld inside the slots, and that way the two pipes stay lined up. Okay, we got our flange there, and we got our pipe running all the way back here. We kind of got it propped up on blocks because we got no hanger back here, and out the side. Sorry about that. It's just needs a little adjustment, and what I failed to consider, tried to make everything square just by eyeball, and we did pretty good, but that front section's running downhill a little bit, so this section's running downhill a little bit, and when you run downhill like that, by the time you get to the other end, we're down about 3/4 of an inch farther than what I'd like. So what we're gonna do, since we just tacked this joint up here, is we'll go ahead and right there we'll grind the weld on the top, the little tack weld, and we'll cut a make a cut down through there, and leave the bottom fixed, and then just close the gap and weld it back together, and that should bring the tail end of this up to where we need it. We got the fuel line right there, which is nice, great planning. So what we're going to have to do is insulate that fuel line where it comes close to the exhaust. And originally what I wanted to do was have that pipe come out here, and the angle of it now is going to bring it out back here if you continue that on. And to be very honest, that's probably better. We're not going to be able to get it up tight here anyway because of the fuel line. So, and we're going to have to come up with some kind of a muffler system. I do have a couple of super traps, and what I think I'm going to do is weld another flange here, and then I'll have two options. I can take a short length of pipe with a flange and run the pipe all the way out and have straight pipes, or I'll have the super trap with a flange that I can bolt on, and the super trap will sit, right in this area right here. We're just going to have to see. We can't have it hanging down too far, but I think we'll be okay. So that's the next deal. As I say, we've got to pull this back off, cut a V in that pipe up there, weld it back together, put it back on. Work, work, work. We got exhaust on one side there, and we're working on the other side. Got a couple of flanges here that we've got to open up a little bit. Actually, I got one. I've got one opened up, and I got them bolted together, so I got to open the other one up to match. So it'll slip over the pipe, and then we'll put some washers in between there and tack them in place. Take the washers out and run the saw blade through there. But the rest of the deal is that we have this pipe exiting under the car just ahead of the back wheel, and yeah, they're a little noisy. So we've got to work out really how to put some mufflers in there. So got some more 1/4-inch plate here, and we're going to make a couple more of these flanges and weld one right on the end of this pipe where it's under the car there ahead of the back wheel. We have to make sure we get it on there good and square, and then we'll show you the next part here in a minute. So we have a couple of these super duper mufflers, and this is a piece of 2-inch, I think, OD pipe. It's pretty heavy wall, so it's probably 1 3/4, 7/8 inside. But our plan is to make a couple more flanges, and this time you'll just have the hole in there big enough for the pipe to go through, and that flange will get welded to that pipe, and then what we'd be able to do is bolt this flange to the other flange at the end of the pipe under the car, and essentially bolt these mufflers on right at the end. And what we're going to do really is take all of this stainless nonsense off of here. These are just fancy cups. There's nothing really inside here. Way up here, there's a flange that this pipe is welded to, and then you have your discs in here. This particular muffler has 12 discs in it, so it ought to be fairly free flowing, but maybe take the crack out of that exhaust, and we'll see how that's all going to work. But I've essentially got to make I've got a pattern here, and I've got to cut 2 of these flanges out of this 1/4-inch plate and bore the hole in there and drill the holes so that we can bolt the whole thing together. And then, for some reason we want to ride around and make a lot of noise, we can just take the 4 bolts out and unbolt the mufflers, and Bob's your uncle. So here's a little lesson. I don't know if it's trigonometry or physics or algebra or whatever the hell kind of math it is, but we want to find we have this circle that we traced on there, but we don't know where the center is. So we take a pair of dividers. You got a sharp point on either end, and you go over here and you make a pass, and then you go over here and you make a pass, and where those 2 lines cross each other, you draw a line down through there, and then you do the same thing from here and the same thing from here, and where those 2 lines cross, you draw a line that away. And then where those 2 straight lines cross each other, that is the center. Put your center punch mark and drill your hole. And that's the lesson for today. Okay. We took our 1/4-inch plate and made ourselves a plate here. We haven't drilled our 4 transfer holes yet because we need to butt it up against the other plate and mark those holes. But essentially, we got a 2-inch hole in here, and that was some tough hole sawing. I think this. I think I snagged a piece of 4130 here instead of just ordinary mild steel, and it took some effort to carve that hole in there. But the bottom line here is that this pipe will fit right in that plate, and not like you see it now, but we'll end up welding that plate to this pipe wherever. We need to figure out how much of it we need, and then this whole affair will bolt to the end of the oval exhaust back by the wheel, and we will have some bolt-on mufflers. So on to the next piece. Back on the Pinto exhaust, we've got one side in place, and man, it took a lot of grinding and drilling and melting metal together, but we got a pipe down from the engine to the back tire, and that is a straight pipe. It's 2.5-inch oval exhaust all the way back. We went with the oval because there's not a lot of ground clearance on this thing, so we wanted it tucked up under the car. And then we have our bolt-on super trap muffler right at the end, which ought to work out pretty good. We can make another section of pipe here if we want, with just pipe all the way out if we want to ride around with open exhaust and annoy everybody, or we can drop that whole pipe off up there, have the exhaust there up under our feet. What we got to do now is make some hangers. We've got a spring up there holding the pipe up, and I'm going to put a couple of more springs, one there and one out here, and see how that works. And then I have my doubts really, because the heat will get to the springs and so on and so forth, but we'll probably have to put some proper hangers. Might weld some little round rod to the pipe and then get those little rubber donut gizmos, something simple. We want it simple so we can take it off if we have to. But there's one pipe. Now I have to admit that this section here is round pipe into the super trap. So we go from 2.5-inch oval to basically 2-inch round, and what that means is that part of that oval pipe over here is blocked off. We've got the pipe offset to one side, and I don't know if that's going to help or hurt. I think for what we're doing, we probably won't notice the difference.